Today, we've got a little bit of everything. We've got a giant krait, an oversized pig, a full specimen cup, golden pencils, and yes, even anal palooza. The Living With Yourself after show starts now.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Welcome to the Living With Yourself after show. I'm Chistian Bladt, joined for this batch of episodes by the lovely Carla Contreras. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
And thanks for jumping in here to talk about the show. Before we dive into episode 6,
Yes.
because you haven't been on the panel for the previous episodes, just sort of give us your thoughts, just generally, as the show started and as it's built up to this point through the first 5 episodes.
I feel sorry for Miles
Sure.
a lot. I feel like literally the whole time I was watching the show, up until maybe like the last 2 episodes, it's a little depressing. I think it's a dark show.
Yeah.
I really side with the clone a lot. I feel like he's what Miles should be, and then Miles is kind of like a coward, I feel, for really settling for whatever his life has turned out to be. It's a little harsh, but I'm not Team Miles. I'm not.
So you're Team Clone at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, we don't want to give too much away, but it might be hard to stay Team Clone through later episodes.
That I agree with.
And as Lauren and I discussed through the last few episodes, I was initially leaning towards Team Clone, but it's really just he's so cocky and he knows he's better. And, you know, he does things out of spite, like finish the play. Whatever, wrote more of the play. I don't think he actually finished it, because I think even this Miles is not that motivated that he could finish. You know, the joke we've had sort of through the first 5 episodes is that Clone Miles isn't like a 10 out of 10 on a scale of 10. You figure original Miles is about a 4. Clone Miles is like a 6. So he's better,
Really?
but he's not great.
Okay.
You know, he's not in better shape. He's not even smarter. He's just, his thoughts are organized better. He's a little bit more motivated. I think he understands how to be a better person, how to be a better employee, a better husband. But as we'll see in later episodes, I think implementing some of that knowledge and turning it into ability might be a bit of a problem. But that's sort of where I stand, and I do feel very sorry for original Miles.
Yes.
You know,
and the wife.
Yes, I feel very sorry for Kate for at least through this point. I would say through all the episodes, I feel bad for her, actually. So this episode starts with a rather ominous arrival of a giant krait, which we'll get to at the end of the episode. But we do have sort of a typical breakfast for original Miles and Kate, where she's very distracted looking at her phone, something that we will focus on in a later episode. But, you know, she's going to this big design conference, and she mentions that she's thinking of getting rid of the credenza. And he's like, okay, you know, because he hates running into the thing. And it was supposed to be sort of this big kind of romantic gesture is like a symbol of their relationship. What do you think it says about the state of the relationship at this point in episode 6 that Kate's talking about getting rid of it and Miles is like, sounds good to me?
I think it's what we've been seeing. He's just, I personally think is very self-centered. He doesn't put her needs into any of his choices. I feel that he makes like on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
And even though I get that the credenza doesn't mean anything to him, the backstory of what it means to Kate is really important.
Absolutely.
And the fact that he doesn't even think twice about it, if I were his wife, I would be pissed too.
Yeah, I mean, he literally says to her in one of the earlier episodes that, you know, going to the spa and ultimately creating the clone, it's like, this had nothing to do with you. And it's like, what's a terrible thing to say, even if it's true. And I also don't think it's accurate, because part of the reason he feels the way he does, I think, is how he feels he fits into their relationship. And, you know, he is incredibly self-centered, like you said. So, and I think that is one of the advantages that Clone Miles is able to have. It's like, you know, he's only been around a couple weeks at this point. You know, he's got all these memories that he didn't actually live, but he understands all of them. He has the same feelings as Miles, but he's not beaten down. He doesn't have the resentment, and he has more self-confidence than the original Miles. So I think he's more successful in you know, for both of those reasons. So I think that we get the realization, the revelation, similar words, that Clone Miles actually put the money back into their account that had originally been taken out for the cloning. And original Miles, talks about there's sort of a very telling moment where he's like, it was my money, our money. All right, mostly your money. He's just sort of backpedaling. That's basically sums up his life right there. He tries to stand up for himself, and he's like, oh, actually, yeah, it's not really my money. Okay, it's actually your money, And I think he really is he feels terrible about himself. And I think, it's very corny, but if you don't feel good about yourself, you're not going to be able to feel good about your partner, your spouse. So I think it's very easy to feel bad for Kate in the course of the relationship, especially as the series goes along. She does make a very telling comment, though, that I think lets us know that something's... She says, it's funny how different you two really are. Oh,
I wrote that down, too. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is deep.
Original Miles didn't really say much to it. He doesn't really think anything of it. The episode features something that I was actually a little surprised by, that Original Miles actually goes to the fertility clinic. I expected... Clone Miles would do it. It's like, well, why isn't he going? Yeah, sure, I just expected him to go at some point. Were you surprised that he actually went to the fertility clinic, Original Miles?
Yes, just like the receptionist was.
Yeah, it was actually very funny. He's like, you look different than I imagined, and the receptionist's like, you looked exactly as I imagined, which I thought was a very funny exchange.
No, yeah, I was super shocked by that because from the beginning, I guess I kind of get it, but I'm like, what is your hesitation? And we come to find out that it took him 2 years to even go get his sperm checked out. Yeah. That's a long time to string someone along. So first of all, Kate is patient. Yeah. I would have lost it by like month 6.
I mean, good for you that you could have lasted 6 months. I mean, that's a long time. And obviously, we talked, a couple after shows ago, they went through the pain of, having a miscarriage. And, it takes a little time to come back from that. But, I mean, Miles, I think that moment is more than 2 years, Like, I think they've been in the suburbs for longer than that. And then they only really started trying to focus on having a family. So it surprised me. It's more like I didn't give Original Miles enough credit. I just figured he was never going to go. In fact, when the guy calls him, he's like, I'm just going to go ahead and cancel the appointment. All right. So let's just stop doing this. And then he actually goes. And I thought that, I don't know, I didn't give him enough credit for that. So I was impressed.
Well, I think with time, as the episodes progress, I think Clone Miles is giving him an insight to how badly he's really treated a lot of his relationships with Kate, with his sister. So I think for him not to have gone would just have been like an even bigger mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say that this is generally speaking, this is, this show's a bit of a dramedy, but, the comedy comes in bursts. Every once in a while, you'll get it here and there. And I thought him actually at the fertility clinic and going into the collection room, I thought was actually a very funny moment because he's, reading some of the titles and the guy from the front desk chimes in and he's like, dude, are you going to listen to me while I'm in here? And then he doesn't say anything. And sort of playing off of that. And as I mentioned in the tease, he was listing off the titles of the pornographic films, and one of them being Anal Palooza. It's just funny. So, they find the comedy and stuff like that. But I thought it was funny. What did you think of sort of the whole sequence, him at the fertility clinic? There's the interacting with the receptionist, there's actually going into the room, and then after he has left his specimen in the cup.
I feel like that was one of the few moments all season where you see him kind of feel accomplished. Like at the end when he left it with the receptionist or the guy, and he was like, here, and he's like, you take it to collections, like, or the lab or whatever. He's like, no, I'll just leave it here. Yeah. He feels like good, like he did something positive. And that, I don't know. It's just, I feel like I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, mainly because I feel like he doesn't really want it. Yeah. But then he's trying to live up to the standards of the clone.
Right. It's almost like he got shamed into doing it. And
Exactly.
As a father of two, I don't know that you should be committing yourself towards having a family unless you're actually interested in having a family. You don't sort of just do it like, well, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. I think if he really didn't want to do it, I think that's a conversation that he should have had with Kate. But we don't really know. Like, you get the sense at some point, through flashbacks, that I think he wanted to start a family. And right now, maybe it's just he feels bad about himself and he's like, I don't know if this is a good time to start a family. But he also might not want to. It's a problem when you have somebody who is as, just sort of sad in every sense of the word is very sad person. He just sort of, you look at him and you're like, oh, that guy's pretty sad, So I think that it was good character building for original Miles, but then we also see him go to the big town hall for the Hillston vote. And this is sort of, we've jumped ahead 5 days. And Clone Miles is supposed to have been working on this campaign. He's supposed to be here for the vote. And, and then he finds out that he's not there.
He's missing for a week.
So he decides to go. But interestingly, he decides to go in a way where he hides and doesn't get up on the stage, doesn't let any of his coworkers know. What do you think is the inspiration for Miles to actually go to this thing that he was going to leave in the hands of a clone?
I feel like it wasn't necessarily even inspiration. It was just someone needed to show up.
Right.
And him going and like hiding behind the hat and everything, it really actually irritated me. I'm like, why? And then when he sees that the seat is empty, instead of just getting up, stepping up and giving a proposal that's already worked for both versions of Miles.
Yeah.
It's like he just sits back and kind of gives up. I mean, he eventually tries when the vote, right before the vote's about to happen with the crowd of people, but it's just another instance where I'm just like, you're just have no like courage. You're like, like where's your like, your backbone? Like, you need to get up. And then he doesn't. So I was really disappointed because I'm like, I feel like even though he hates the clone, he genuinely does rely on him a lot.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's a very complicated relationship.
Very.
I mean, it's, I think that no one's more capable of, hating you than yourself, at least in some moments. And then this Miles hates himself and then also the other version of himself, so he's got like compounded, like, basically exponentially, like double the hatred. In sort of before he goes there, he does find out that he was submitted for this Golden Pencil Award, and he's sort of outraged. And he literally says, seriously, for that sappy piece of shit? And the person on the other line is like, I'm sorry. And I think that also factored into it a little bit. He's like, this thing might have been an award and my clone's not even there. It's like he's supposed to be, in charge of all of this. So I thought that that sequence at the vote, sort of that town hall, was very interesting. With him hiding behind the pillar and shouting things out once in a while, trying to get reactions. The way that he rolls his eyes at the video that was produced that basically was his presentation.
Yeah.
And when it starts to go over badly, he's like really into that fact, and he can't get a hold of the clone and he gets more frustrated. So I thought it was funny that he asks himself, what would you do if you were you? What did you think about that moment and also what he ultimately decides to do?
I feel like that's what he should have been asking himself from the beginning when everything first happened.
Maybe episode 2. Maybe not in episode 1, but at least in episode 2, yeah.
I feel like, why has it taken so long? Because I feel like everything the clone is exactly what he's capable of.
Yeah, right,
so
exactly.
It's irritating to just watch him like we've said, kind of just settle for whatever happens, or not even that, but really relying on the clone to kind of get him to the finish line.
Yeah.
You could do it yourself.
Well, and he does do it himself. He realizes after turning down an invitation from Ray the farmer from the first couple of episodes, he goes over to the bar when he realizes, how he might be able to leverage this situation. We see that he's seen a magazine, and, it's just sort of a glance. It's not something that's really dwelled upon until later, but it's very significant that he's kind of flipping through it and he sees something. So he goes over to the bar, and he's basically holding court with all of these all of these farmers, and he's talking about his poultry farmer grandfather and how he used to go there to the farm in the summers and he was really bad at it, and that, you know, basically his grandfather ended up passing away a year ago, and he thinks he says the conglomerate international cell tower that he had put in right there in his farm, you know, then he started to come down with signs of cancer after that. So, and then he talks about spreading the ashes, and he tells this whole story. He's so proud of himself, and he's like, not bad for old Miles, and he is indeed old Miles at this point, not new Miles. So, as you're watching the story, what do you think about what he's having to say, and what do you think about how well it goes over?
I didn't like that that's how he went about it. But then it makes me question, like, would clone Miles make the same sneaky choices, you know? So it's like, instead of going about it or getting to the finish line in a good way that's like, doesn't include lying and all that, he goes a whole different route, which eventually he ends up getting caught for. I feel like the whole time I just basically compared him to what I thought the clone would do.
Right.
But then...
Is the clone capable of this level of deception? You know, is he sneaky like this? Is he too wholesome to think like this? You know, he is a clone of Miles, so in theory he might be, but he's also not desperate the way that this Miles is. So you're absolutely right that, you know, the vote might have gone the other way if clone Miles had been there, because he just would have given an earnest proposal and figured everybody would vote for it. And, you know, it really didn't play well in that room. I don't think either one of the companies was something that they were excited about. But so I think that, you know, clone Miles might have jeopardized the vote and, you know, the promotion that he had been promised and all that. So he does get it. But there's two run-ins that happen to Miles that I want to get your thoughts on, both of them. The first is when he's in the men's room. There's somebody who obviously works for the Conglomerate International company. And he talks about, you know, that that libel's a criminal offense in this state. The fact that he lied, he very clearly lied with the story, you know, that he told. This is the first sign that we're starting to see of like, oh, this didn't really happen, which I didn't think that it happened. You know, I would have been really impressed if that was a true story. That
yeah.
It's like, well, you pulled that out now?
Out of nowhere?
If that was a true story, why are you sitting on it this long? So he has that, and, you know, the guy pees on his foot because, you know, I guess that's the ultimate power move, is for a guy to pee on you like that. And then likable Ray the farmer, you know, points out that, you know, it was a good show, but you left the magazine back at the bar. And he says to him, I pegged you for a pervert and a fool, but not a liar. So this realization that the story was made up, Carla, that, and then also those two interactions. What did you think about all of that?
I mean, I feel like even watching it, he didn't have much of a reaction to either people kind of reprimanding him. I feel like it was just one of those moments where he's like, oh, another thing that just went wrong, or like another thing I did wrong. I feel like he doesn't really care.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's hard to feel bad for him because he just genuinely doesn't care, like, about what, like, who he hurts or like what he makes up or what he does wrong. I feel like he's just okay with all of it. Yeah, I feel like he may worry once there's like actual repercussions, but I feel like as long as he gets what he wants out of this situation, like, he's okay with it. I feel like he didn't really care.
No, he certainly didn't care about the farmers and everybody in the small town. You know?
Yeah.
He's just looking out for Miles. He's looking out for 2 Miles, I guess, technically. But I thought that was very interesting, and you know, it works out for him. And then he later, shortly thereafter, realizes that Clone Miles had been skipping work all week. When he calls in, you know, he talks to the receptionist at work, which is a sort of a funny moment, because she's like, and don't worry about our little hookup. You're too old for me anyway. I have daddy issues. And he's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Which, of course, is, I think, as thick as original Miles can be, he probably puts it together at some point in his head, like, oh, okay, so Clone Miles did that. But I did think it was a very funny interaction. So then that brings us full circle back at the end of the episode, that we see the krait that had been on the front step. Now, what did you think might be in that krait at that moment?
What's crazy is that I thought it was going to be the clone version of Kate. I, for some reason, thought like that would happen one way or another.
Yeah, I thought we might have gotten that. I also thought it could have been the clone version of Miles as well. I don't know who would have killed him, that sort of thing, because he'd been gone for a little while. But I also did think that, I at some point, a few times during these 2 episodes, I thought Kate might clone herself. Not when Clone Miles like went with her hair to try and do that. So I was surprised, but of course it actually makes perfect sense that it was just the cut of the pig that that Mr. Hilston told him about. So I thought that was very funny. It's probably it's a weird gift. It's also like, what are you supposed
how does it stay fresh?
Yeah, how are you gonna cook that?
It's weird.
He's like in New Jersey in the winter. He's not gonna do like a backyard barbecue with it. I don't quite know what he's supposed to do with a giant pig like that. I guess take it to a butcher. I don't even know. But then we end with the drama of a bag over Miles's head, which is where we'll leave our commentary on this episode. But before we go, when the bag went on his head, who did you think was on the other end of that bag?
I thought it was either Kate or the clone. Because you see Kate start to fall for the clone.
Yes. But in this episode, you're starting to get because we know that they met for their date. And that's what we'll really dive into when we talk about episode 7. But that you're starting to see that, okay, so Kate or the clone, that makes sense. I thought it might have been somebody from the competing cell tower company, because that guy was pretty mad.
I didn't think about that.
So I thought it might have been that. And then also I thought it might have been that guy Dan that he works with, who is seeing his standing in the company go away, which we see in a later episode. But as for who it was, we'll discuss that in a future episode. That's all the time we have for episode 6. But until we talk about episode 7, which for those watching live will just be in a few minutes. But if you're watching the archive, it's also right next to where you found this. But Carla, where do people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Carla Contreras and Twitter at Carla_C.
And you can find me, Christian Bladt, on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. We'll be back in a couple minutes, and looking forward to talking more about the show, Living With Yourself. We'll see you in a little bit.
See you soon.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.